This podcast is part of the SJ Network. Go to s-j-network.com for more great podcasts and for contact information on publicist Steve Joyner.
You are listening to In a City Like Yours, a semi-monthly podcast featuring interesting people with interesting life stories. This podcast may contain language and/or subject matter not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm your host, Michael G. Moore. Please visit our website at inacityLikeYours.com. That's INACITYLIKEYOURS.com for links to our social media, all popular podcast platforms, and links of interest pertaining to all episodes. Here is this week's story.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm calling from Burbank, California. And my age is, I guess you'd say I'm over 60, but I don't feel it. I feel like I'm under 60, mainly because I have reinvented myself in my declining years as an actor here in Hollywood. We moved here, 4 years ago. We have 2 daughters out here, and we have 3 grandchildren out here now. We have 4 grandchildren on the East Coast, but we didn't want to move to New Jersey or Massachusetts, especially in the winter. But anyway, it's great being out here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about something I've been thinking about for a while, and other people have brought it up. When you reach middle age, you oftentimes lose your parents, especially if your parents had you when they were older than average. And I've come to the conclusion that one cannot really be a mature adult until one is able to look at one's parents objectively. Now, your parents can still be alive and for you to look at them objectively. However, most of us carry the childhood burden throughout our adult life, that we sort of look at our parents in a, I wouldn't say non-judgmentally, but we look at them much as we did when we were much younger, that they can't do anything wrong, and if they do something wrong, we really can't accept it. And, well, I think I've begun to look at both of my parents in an objective way, as they were as normal human beings with their problems and foibles and fears and prejudices. And that's allowed me to sort of break the invisible chains that have held me all these years. And I don't think I could have done what I'm doing now if I were still in my 20s and still beholden to what I thought my parents would think about what I was doing. I was an only child, and my father was a very, I guess, domineering type of person, and my mother sort of let him sort of take over. There wasn't much room there for difference of opinion, and I became a lawyer. I went to law school, and this was during the Vietnam War, and it sort of kept me out of draft. However, during my first year of law school, Richard Nixon ingeniously brought in the draft lottery, and my number was 329, which means that I was number 329 on the list. My birthday came number 329 on the list of people who would be drafted to be sent to Vietnam. And if you were that high on the list, you would not be, or I guess if you were that low on the list, you would not be going unless the Vietnamese came over here in their bamboo canoes with machine guns. We had to defend the shores, which was a pretty absurd idea anyway. I guess, Michael, you're close to my age. Not that close, but do you remember the Vietnam War?
Yes, I do. I'm 58, so.
Oh, you're 58.
Yeah, I was
okay.
a child, but I was old enough to know what was going on, and I remember being
sure.
on the news every night, so you couldn't miss it.
Oh yeah, and that was a big event in people's lives, especially guys who were my age and between your age and my age and a little bit older, because you were too young to be drafted, but I was perfect draft age, and I had no terrible health problems. I didn't have heel spurs. I didn't know about heel spurs until 20 years later when I actually had them. And I didn't, I remember I took several draft physicals because I was trying to get into Navy or Air Force officer candidate school, but I never did. I was a smart kid in college. However, they ask you all these mechanical questions, and I was really bad with that kind of thing. They have all these gears going different directions. You had to tell them which direction they were going, and I just couldn't do that. So I was not a candidate for officer candidate school. But I remember in the draft physical, a doctor asked a kid about his health. He said, "Yeah, I've got a heart problem. I have what we call heartburn." I thought that was kind of funny. They had other suggestions of what to do to get out of the draft physical. Now, my father claimed that during World War II, he wanted to get into the military because I guess he was in his mid-30s when Pearl Harbor was attacked. And he says, and I believed it at the time, that he was not allowed to go in the military because of high blood pressure. However, I'm not sure he ever even had high blood pressure. And he told me once sort of slyly, if you want your blood pressure raised, I know what to do. And so I have a feeling he might have done that to himself and then claim he couldn't go in because of high blood pressure. But that's just thought here. But he also told me, and he was always pretending that, or saying, I know pretending I'm saying now, but he was always claiming that he was sort of the grown-up in the family. Their father died when my father had two younger brothers. Each one was 7 years younger than the one older. So my father was, I guess, in his 20s when their father died in 1935, and my grandfather had a business in New York City. He had a factory where they made those boxes you get in grocery stores, the corrugated boxes. And he started from scratch. He came over this country with maybe $6, and he had a brother here, and he stayed there for a while in New York, and then he had a push cart for a while. Then he opened a factory, and he also, and this was very rare for that period of time, my grandfather had a black business partner. And in those days, it was very rare for whites and blacks to work together in the same company, and much less as partners. And this was in New York City. He hired this young man as just as a clerk or somebody, just an office person. And my grandfather noticed this young man was unusually sharp. And he said, I think you ought to be going to night school. And he encouraged this young man to go to night school. And in those days, New York University was a very inexpensive place to go. So he went to New York University and got a business degree. And eventually, this young man became vice president of my grandfather's company. And the man has a son. He had one son who was a physics professor who's retired, who lives in Queens, and I've spoken to him on the phone. I'd like to go and meet him. Anyway, my father said that when their father died, my grandfather, who died many years before I was ever born, his next younger brother was in medical school in Scotland. And in those days, they had quotas in universities to keep Jewish people out. So I guess they thought if they let us all in, we'd be, it'd be like what they fear about Asian people today. They actually have quotas to hold people back. And so my uncle had to apply overseas. And so he applied to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland and went there. My father went to medical school in this country because his grades were so high that there was no way they could keep him out. It'd be like saying, if you have a perfect score on your SAT, well, they didn't have SAT scores then, but if you had a perfect score on your SAT and they didn't like you because of your race, color, or creed, they still would have to bring you in because there's no way they couldn't do otherwise. So my father took the Queen Mary over to England and went up to Scotland, and he said he was going to convince his brother to stay in medical school and not come back and take over the family business. And then my father took a tour through Europe and France, Italy, Yugoslavia, and then he came back. And my father was on the outs with his younger brother for many years. I never met the man until my father was very, very old and very ill, and the two brothers came down to Texas to visit him. And then I met my cousin. My uncle had two children, both of whom were doctors, and I never met the boy. I did meet the girl. The girl, of course, she's close to my age. She's a physician in New York, and I told her, about the story of my father going over to Scotland to keep her father in medical school, and to encourage him to stay there and not to come back and take over the business. He said, no, that's not the story at all. The story was this. My father came over to Scotland to convince her father, Uncle Norman, to get out of medical school and come back and take over the business. So it was just the opposite of what my father said. And I noticed these little lies throughout my career as his son. There were some other things that came up, that my father married my mother on the rebound because he had to break up with his girlfriend, who his own mother didn't like, and he actually had his brother, my Uncle Norman, go over to the lady's house to get the ring back from her. My dad didn't have the guts to do it, and he used that ring for his own wife when he married his chosen partner. Then he had a third brother who was much younger, and there were these inconsistencies and strangeness, and so after meeting my cousins and going through all this, I was able to look at my parents as, not to say they were villains or anything like that, but they were people with great weaknesses, as we all are in our own way. And when we came out, my wife and I came out to California, I felt very drawn to return to acting, which I had done some in Texas back in the 1970s. I had finished law school, and I wasn't made to be a lawyer. I have a son who's a lawyer. He really likes it. He does intellectual property in New York City. He works like a dog, but he's good at it, and I was never really that good at it. And so I tried out for a movie. I did an audition for a movie at the University of Texas. They have a radio, TV, and film department, and I was going through some hard times, and I had no training as an actor, so I went over there and read the lines, and they liked it. They said, "Well, we're looking for somebody who's down and out, and this guy, you definitely sound down and out." And it was great fun doing this movie. I'd never done anything like that before, and unfortunately, the movie never got produced because the students made some very serious technical errors in continuance, and the professor made them stop production, and it actually died on the cutting room floor. In those days, they had celluloid film, and they would develop it and then look at it and then edit it, and they would cut the celluloid and then glue it back together, splice it back together, and so it actually did die in the cutting room. So the only thing that survived that film was a still shot of myself in cowboy garb drawing a Colt 45, because the character in the movie was a guy who worked in one of those touristy sites in Wimberley, Texas, where they put on gunfights, fake gunfights for tourists, and that was my job. And it was so much fun doing it. I said, I'd like to do this. I even put a resume together. And then I was in another student movie, but I don't know where it ever happened to that. Well, years passed, and I came out to California, and sort of in the back of my mind, I said, I'd like to get into this, but I think I want to start out as an extra, because I have no training. I really don't know what to do. And I finally figured out to go online, and then you sign up for Central Casting. Central Casting is a great casting agency that provides stand-ins, and it provides background actors for TV shows and for movies and for whatever. A stand-in is a person who sits in front of the camera while the actor or actress is not there, so that they don't have to be in front of the camera when they're not being filmed. So I signed up, and it's a great thing to do. It's totally free of charge, and the good thing is that Central Casting is located in Burbank. It was just about a mile from my house. I walked over there, and I signed up and started getting roles, and it was in some interesting TV shows like Scandal and the show about LBJ Go All the Way with Cranston, and it was some Hand of God, and then there's a lot of small shows, and generally I had a great deal of fun with that. But then I went to a seminar over at Central Casting, and one of the leaders of the seminar, who was a casting director and an actor, he said, you guys are really actors. You should take acting lessons so you would get better jobs, and the people appreciate you more and think you're more serious. And he suggested that we look at Steve Easton. Steve Easton is a character actor. He's a 45-year veteran, and he has a studio in Burbank, and his approach is totally different from most of the approaches that other acting teachers take. I won't get into the details, but it's a very, very interesting way of approaching the script. And I started taking classes there, and that was in June of 2015. And I've been going there every week since then. And I'll be going there this week, every Wednesday night, or if you don't miss the Wednesday night class, you can go on Tuesday or Thursday morning. And my kids thought that was interesting, and they bought me headshots for Father's Day in 2015. They have a friend who's a director who also is a photographer, and they put some money together, and I went over to his studio/house and posed for headshots, and joined some of the websites for actors. They're called breakdown services. There are a number of them, and uploaded my headshots. I didn't have much experience for a resume. They discourage you putting on background work if you want to be a principal actor at speaking parts. So I put on what I had, and eventually I started auditioning and getting parts, small parts, bigger parts, and it's been that way for the past 4 years. I joined the union, the Screen Actors Guild, in May, and I have a manager and an agent, but most of my roles have been self-submitted, or I've been contacted by filmmakers who saw my reel. A reel is a short video of excerpts of your work. So I have two. I have a dramatic reel and a comedy reel, and they're only 2 minutes long each, and they give you a few seconds of your work, and this is what you do. And you have your pictures on the website. Sometimes you have a slating picture where you have yourself saying, "Hi, I'm so and so," and then they can download your headshot. And I'm looking at my resume right now, and my manager got it into shape. It looks really good. I sent it to you, I think, yesterday, or did I not?
Yeah, you sent it to me.
Okay, and I'm looking at the film. It says film, television. I think I have about 11 feature films that will be either coming out this year or next year. Some of them, they're in what they call post-production. After there's pre-production where they do all the planning, getting the locations, getting the actors, getting the crew. Then the production where they actually do the filming. And then post-production when they edit and get the color correction, the sound correction. And these three stages, the most difficult is the post-production, where they have to go through all the footage and choose which take to use. So if you do, you're sitting having a conversation in your scene, they might do several takes of it, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 takes, and from different angles. So the director will look at each, or the editor will look at each take and work with the director and choose the combination of takes that they want to use for that scene. So when you see a movie, you see 1 minute of a scene in a movie, you might be seeing 20, 30 different takes edited together, and that's the way it works. But I was lucky enough to have leading roles in 2 of these. One is called Somerset, a science fiction drama. The other is called Illusions, which is a sort of a fantasy comedy. Then there's one called The Fallen Crest, or also called The French Cowboy. I played a villainous cowboy in there. I actually tried out for this Gabby Hayes sort of character. If you remember, Roy Rogers had a sidekick named Gabby Hayes, this sort of old crotchety guy with a beard. And I did the audition for it, then got the role, and then they said, "Oh, we made a mistake. We wanted somebody older than you." And so they chose somebody actually 10 years my junior, but he looks older. But they gave me a chance to audition for another role, for a sort of campy villain named Wilson. So I did that, and there was just one scene, but I got to the set, and it ended up being 5 scenes filmed over a couple of months period. As an independent film on a low budget, you might go back and forth many times before we complete it. Then there's one called Sid's Lake, where I play a psychiatrist. It's sort of a science fiction movie. This is called Broken Together, which I'm not sure what it is, but it's I guess it's an art film. I play another doctor there. Treasure of Pansovia, where I play the sidekick to the main character. We're filming out in the desert, out on Highway 66. Route 66 cuts through California, and it's in the middle of the desert. There's a gas station there, and actually a ghost town, because it used to be a big, a very thriving town during the days when Route 66 was an active highway. Now they have Highway 10 cutting across the country, and Route 66 is just a minor road. The Cry, which is a spy thriller in black and white. I play the head of the agency there, and then there's Wade in the Water. That's an interesting one where it's about a man who murders a child molesting minister, and why he murders him, and the friendship he forms with the dead minister's daughter is the heart of this movie. I auditioned for the role of the father of one of the victims of this molesting minister, and then they said, we think you'd be better as the child molester himself. And eventually I've been in like 3 movies that were showing in festivals in May in which I played the child molester. It's kind of strange, but I guess they wanted somebody who looked trustworthy but could also be kind of evil and mean. Sort of, those are roles I kind of like.
You said you've been in 3 films as a child molester?
Yeah, I didn't do any molesting in the movies. In this movie, Wade in the Water, I don't really say anything. I appear a few times, and he shoots me he breaks into my house and shoots me. So I disappear early in the film. But in the other ones, I play a coach who likes his girl students a little more than he should, and nothing happened there. It was more of a I wouldn't say a documentary, but it was like a docudrama. And there was no words in it except the narration. And the third one, I'm having a senior moment here. I can't exactly remember what it is, but I know there was a third one in which I played that kind of unsavory character. But there's one called Flight of the Sparrow, which is in post-production now. It started out as a long, short film, but they've expanded it into a full-length feature. It is a story about a young black girl in Georgia, in rural Georgia in the 1950s. And the young girl has grown into a very interesting and educated woman, and she was on the set with us because I think they interview her as part of the film. But I play the lawyer, a very wealthy lawyer who sort of owns the town, and who is also a bootlegger. And so I'm selling moonshine, and my business partner is a black young man who's also the father of the young girl about which the movie is made. And let's see here. There's one called Genesis, The Future of Mankind as Woman. Now I play a sleazy congressman being interviewed. It's a sort of a parody dream sequence movie, and I think that it'll be a big hit when it comes out. And finally, I've been in a lot of short films. The one that my manager wanted to keep on my resume is Rolling in the Deep. It's about a young black soldier returning from the war in World War II to a town in South Carolina. He goes into a cafe or a diner, which is plainly written on the window, whites only. And why he goes in there and what happens in that visit is the heart of this film. I play the owner of the diner, and the film has been winning award after award. We've gotten ensemble awards for the acting team. An ensemble award for acting is that the entire crew or the entire acting team is awarded for the effort. And we are standing now for another award it's called the ICU Award, ISEEYOU Awards in Detroit, both as ensemble, but I'm also happy that I've been nominated for Best Actor in a supporting role in a short film. And all the other actors in this film, the main actors, have also been nominated for their roles: Best Actress in a supporting role and the Best Lead. The young man who plays the soldier he's already been awarded Best Actor in a short in other festivals, but in this festival he's also nominated for Best Actor, Best Lead in a short film. And that's it. There's another. I was in a pilot last year for a drama, and you do a lot of pilots, what they call pilot season. I think it's in the spring, where there are a lot of. And most of these pilots will never see the light of day, but I was lucky enough to be in a pilot that's been picked up by a network. I can't say which network. I can't say anything about the pilot, but I think we'll be filming pretty soon. It's a drama, and it's going to be very interesting. There are a number of little comedy videos I've been in, like one called Sides, one's called Spin the Wheel, and these are one's called 5 Awkward People You're Likely to Meet at Thanksgiving. And these are very funny things, and I enjoyed making them. People seem to enjoy watching them. I've also been on these shows like To Tell the Truth. I'll be appearing, I think, in the first Sunday of September. It'll be episode number 11. And I got to be on that show twice in that episode, because after you do your piece with two imposters and the real person, the surviving imposters face off for another round with the celebrity panel, and it's a fun show. It's a lot more interesting now than it was when I was a kid. Did you ever watch To Tell the Truth when you were young?
I did.
Yeah, well, now it's really fun. It's like the audience sings, the master of ceremony has his mother sitting there sort of telling people what to do. It's really fun. But anyway, that sort of covers what I've been doing. A bunch of other stuff on my resume that I could talk about, but
let me ask you this. How old were you when you began acting?
I was in my 60s. I started in my mid-60s.
So did you have any experience in perhaps community theater?
Well, let me see. I back in Austin when we lived there at law school, I was given a part in Medea by one of my clients at the Austin Women's Theater, and I played the slave, announcing that to Jason that Medea wasn't the best babysitter in the world. You know what I mean? And that was it. Back in high school, I was in a Spanish club comedy that someone wrote. It was really, really funny, and I had a great time doing it. People were rolling in the aisles, and I should have taken a hint then. The ability to do this in front of an audience and the joy I got from their reaction should have been a hint of what I should be doing. On the other hand, going the route I've gone, I have a wonderful wife, I have 4 wonderful kids, and I have 7 grandchildren. So none of this would have happened if I'd sort of followed my bliss at that time. I guess it's easier to follow your bliss when you've already got your bills paid and you don't have to go to work for a living. You know what I mean?
Howdy, it's Matt Gwynn here, popping in to let you know about the adventures of the albino rhino. It's a show Frank the Giraffe here, my co-host James Godwin, and myself put on for you guys twice a week. Every Wednesday we talk to a comedian, and every Friday. We call it Freak Yeah Friday. The show itself is not safe for work, and that freak is definitely a different word. I just don't know what podcast you're going to be listening to this promo on. And I don't want to, start screaming explicatives while you're sitting in your office. If you're lucky enough to have been able to go back to the work that you did before inside of an office or whatever, But we go on an adventure twice a week, and it's a good time because we get to sit down and talk to some really cool people. And I enjoy it because, I'm just curious little albino who likes to get to know folks, You can find us a couple ways, actually multiple ways, really. Man, there's a lot of different ways to find us. You can find us through our central hub, which is www.albinorhino.me. It's the website you can find me on. And then, the podcast, you can find the videos on YouTube. Search for Adventures of the Albino Rhino. Also linkable from our website. And you can also find us through Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Radio Public, and Spotify. That's right. We're on the same place Joe Rogan is. Granted, we're not the Joe Rogan Experience, but you know what I mean? We're there. So give us a listen. Promise you won't be dissatisfied. And enjoy your day.
What advice would you give other, let's say, people our age who are thinking about getting involved in the film industry?
Okay, well, you don't have to be in Hollywood anymore. You can be in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Houston, Atlanta, Miami. There are opportunities to audition for television, for drama. Whatever you want to do, it's possible to do. If you have a computer, you sign up with some of the breakdown services like Actors Access. You subscribe to them. Actors Access, LA Casting, Casting Frontier, Backstage. Backstage is a magazine, but they also have a website. And what you do, you subscribe, you write down your profile, you get some headshots, professional headshots, not just not 3x5s that your kids take. It has to be really good pictures, not to show how handsome or pretty you are. That's not the point at all. Although you see a lot of headshot photographers here who show, if you're half the people in LA are young and hot. If you're old and cold, you need more than that. So they need to show how you will appear on camera, and so they need to be able to draw out your personality into the picture so that the casting director will see that. And when you go in there, you'll look like the picture. That's important too. They can't do too much airbrushing and all that stuff. Then you try it out. You can look on Craigslist. I think they have calls for acting then. You're not going to get rich doing this right away. I mean, unless you're the one out of a million who does. But I found it to be easier than I thought it would be. And out here in Los Angeles, where there are a jillion film schools, and you should take advantage of the fact wherever you are. I'm sure that in Shreveport or there's a college there, they have a film department. I'm sure that in all over Louisiana there are colleges with film departments now. So try out for these student films. They need people who are mature, because so many student films have people who are 25 disguised as somebody who's 45. It just doesn't work out that way. You bring quality and depth and nuance to the film, and they really appreciate that. It's easier than you think is important, because you hear all the time, it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's good to have friends in high places. I have some cousins who are big producers and actors, and I've got a contact if I wanted to exploit it with a major director, but I don't do that because they get annoyed by being constantly harassed by distant relatives or distant friends. But I think that the best thing is that it's easier than you think. If you work hard, Stick to it. You go to an audition. Don't show that you're nervous. You go in there. You don't look like you're trying to make them like you. You go in there saying, "You have a problem. I have the solution." What I do, I take my classes. I try to master dialogue. That's the heart of getting a job as an actor. Be able to handle dialogue. I go to auditions. I submit myself. My agent submits me. You don't need an agent, especially you won't have an agent until you are able to command a bigger income. But you do your audition. You do the best you can. You say thank you and you leave. You don't smile. You don't give any indication that you really care that much whether you get the job or not. Because after the audition, what I always do, I rub my hands together and I throw away the sides. The sides are the portion of the script that you have for the audition. And sometimes you can do a cold reading, and there are skills associated with an effective cold reading, or you can memorize the lines, but you always have your sides in your hand when you're at the audition. I throw the sides away. I said if they want me, they'll be able to get me. And you just move on to the next one. It's always move on, and the longevity, it pays off. If you do this enough times, you will get hired, and you will be able to impress somebody. If you are good at what you're doing, you'll be able to impress people, and they'll want you back if you're easy to work with. If you're hard to work with and a pain, they're not going to want to deal with you anymore. But just be polite. I think Spencer Tracy said that the art of acting is to learn your lines, get there on time, and don't bump into the furniture, essentially. Just another thing that people say is just let yourself alone. You don't over-dramatize. Did you ever see the movie The Door?
No, I haven't.
It's by a guy named Tim. Oh God, I can't remember his name. It's a cult classic. The Door, and I'm sorry, not The Door. It's called The Room. The Room. ROOM.
I've heard of that, but I haven't seen that. Isn't that
Tommy
supposed to be really bad, but it's so good
yes.
because of it? Yeah, okay.
Yes, they made a movie about it called I'm really bad at remembering things today. I think James James Franco made a movie about this movie. It is so bad in that all the actors are overacting. Everybody's a bad actor except one person, the lady who plays the girlfriend's mother. She's fairly good, but everybody else is like, oh God, they're so dramatic. And what they do, they don't leave themselves alone. In other words, they don't talk the way they would talk in a normal conversation. They up it a bit, and I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's really unskilled, but that's just my opinion. But it's a cult classic, and you can get it on Netflix. Anyway, what does that have to do with anything? It's called overacting. Good acting is not even noticeable, but bad acting really stands out. You can really notice it right away, and you don't have to be an expert to notice it. There's something about it you can tell.